Well, hello everyone. Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar, Cut the Paper and Put the Human Back in Human Resources, How to Transform Your HR Department with Document Management. Just a couple of quick notes before we get started today. For privacy reasons, you won't see other participants listed, but we do have others online with us today. During the presentation, you can send us your questions real time using the chat tab in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. Simply type in your questions at any time and we'll address them at the end of the presentation. Your presenters for today's session are Katie Alberti and Kathleen Vey. Katie is the Solution Marketing Specialist for Administrative Solutions at Highland, creator of OnBase. She joined the company in 2012 as a content strategist, and prior to joining Highland, Katie was a writer and reporter for 10 years covering state and local news. She received her bachelor's degree in magazine journalism from Kent State University, as well as her Master of Arts in Teaching, Integrated Language Arts Curriculum, and Instruction. Kathleen works in the Human Resources Department at Highland as the Employee Engagement Manager, a position she's held since 2008. In her role, she leads a team that is responsible for attracting and retaining top IT talent within the Northeast Ohio region by working to strengthen employee relationships and create a positive work environment with happy, healthy, and engaged employees. Now, since Kathleen will be sharing details on how Highland uses ECM in their HR department, we just want to give you some quick background on Highland. Highland has over 12,000 lifetime customers in 69 countries, which entails quite a task force. Currently at 1,600 employees and steadily growing, Highland has been ranked by Inc. 500 and Deloitte as a fast-growing company and recognized by Fortune as one of 100 best companies to work for and a top workplace by the Plain Dealer, among others. So we're excited to have both Katie and Kathleen on with us today, and at this time I'll turn the floor over to them. Katie, it's all yours.
All right, thank you so much, Judy, and welcome everyone to today's webinar. I'm going to introduce a lot of the topics that we'll discuss today, and then Kathleen's going to give you some insight into how we use ECM in our HR department. So I want you to think about when you first started your role in HR, and think about why did you take that first position. Most likely it was because you enjoyed working with other people. You want to help these people to be successful in their careers, and you want to see the company you're working for do well. However, you also know that when you're in this position, you deal with employee information all day. You receive paper files, documents, emails, data. There's forms to complete and reports to compile. And if this information is still being based in a paper form, you often find that you don't have the time you used to have to focus on your employees and really lead employees to have successful careers at your company. Instead, you find that you're merely focusing on processes that all revolve around paper and making sure that employees fill out the right documentation, that it's getting into the right hands at the right time. And eventually, what tends to happen is you no longer are there for what you intended to do in the first place. Instead of working with employees all the time, instead you're focusing on routing paper throughout your company to ensure that you're compliant, to ensure that your employees are doing well and they're happy in their career. And when you do this, when you focus on all of this content and all of these processes, you really do neglect the main asset to your company, and that is your employees. And as Kathleen will explain to you some, one of the big things we all know in HR is it costs far more money to attract and hire new talent than it does to retain the great talent that you already have. And when you're too focused on all of the manual processing, you don't have the time to spend with your employees. And that lack of engagement, unfortunately, could be the reason why you lose that staff. So today, what I really want you to do is think about what it is that you manage. Is it people or is it things? And what Kathleen and I want you to walk away with from this presentation is that you manage things and you lead people. And you can make that possible with enterprise content management. It's all about that M there in management. Manage all of the information that comes in your HR department so that you can be successful in your job and really put the human back into human resources. So our agenda for today, we're going to cover 3 main points. We're going to share the benefits ECM can bring to HR. We're also going to provide you with an easy approach to ECM, which if you're not too technical savvy, this will really help you to understand what ECM can do for you. And then we'll also provide you with a framework for how you can start to develop your own HR solutions internally with ECM. So to get started, let's talk about the benefits ECM brings to HR. Some of the trends that I've heard while attending the Society for Human Resource Management annual conference this year is, we look at technology like ECM to help us stay competitive, to be secure, to make sure all of our information is secured, and to be prepared if an audit comes up, a natural disaster, etc. And so what we'd like to talk to you about is the benefits of ECM in these three categories. So let's start with where HR relies on documents. Kathleen, can you talk about these 5 areas and really how ECM has allowed you to really focus on the right things and not really the manual paper-based processing?
Absolutely. Thanks, Katie, and good afternoon, everybody. I'm glad to be here today with you to share some of the things that ECM has changed for Highland. For me and for all of us, we know, like Katie said, that there are a million documents and a million processes that go along with one, being on the HR side for a company, but also just being a manager or in a leadership role. And so today we'll really dive into the 5 that you see here on the screen, but I want to kind of lay the groundwork and give you a little bit of an overview before we get into it in more detail. So I'll kind of use an example of just one employee, so then you can multiply by however many you might be onboarding and think of it that way. So we know that attracting and retaining the right people, top priority, absolutely. The stats completely vary on this, but it's said to be 1 to 1.5 times someone's salary when you lose that person or that top talent. So we want to be sure that from that first moment that they interact with their company, everything is seamless. Everything is easy for them. So that happens by just that recruiting process. So you're going to recruit, and then you're going to try to onboard and go through that, kind of candidate proposal. That's that resume. That's that application. That's that cover letter. With an ECM solution, you're capturing all those documents electronically, which is a wonderful first initial step, and you're managing them through your solution automatically. So you're routing it to the right people that are the decision makers beyond the HR department, and you're just ensuring that from that beginning first initial step, that candidate not only has a great experience, but you're efficient on your end internally. File management. Now you bring that employee on. So you go through the process, and maybe for one position, you had to manage documents for 50 candidates. So you're going through that. Now you're in the file management for that one lucky soul that made their way in, and now you've got to create a file management solution for them. Now at Highland, and I'm sure it's probably pretty similar, there's 10 documents that take place for that, just on that first day, that employees need to kind of sign and acknowledge. And we do some beforehand through a portal that links into our ECM system, and some that day of. But that's 10 documents right in the gate that then you're going to manage and start to create this file. And we all know those documents probably by heart, but your confidentiality agreement, your I-9, your W-2, your W-4, and so forth. Now you've got this same employee. You've got them in, and you've got all their documents electronically, and you're able to easily find that you've been in compliance, and you have every document that you need. Now they're 2 years later, and if you're like Highland, you might change that employee handbook that they signed that first day. You made some changes, but now you've got to get that out to not only this new hire, but to every employee across the company. Through ECM, we can easily kind of shoot that out with one click, get everybody to agree to, hey, we've made these changes to the handbook, please sign, please acknowledge, please help us be in compliance. Up next, unfortunately, sometimes employee issues arise. And so at this point, you've got that, hopefully it's not that new hire that you really, put all your money on, but sometimes it can be. And at this point, you're able, through the ECM solution again, to add to their file a performance improvement plan. So now in one place, one system, you have every document that you need to really get a handle on this employee. So like all performance improvement plans go, they're intended to improve performance and to keep that employee retained. Sometimes that doesn't work, and you find yourself in kind of an offboarding situation. And this can be voluntary or involuntary, we all know, but if we're following this one case, this one was involuntary, and we're separating an employee. At this point, that employee file still needs to reside within the company, within your system. We all know the endless kind of retention periods that every document has, and everyone is unique, and Still trying to figure out what each one means? Absolutely. And the system, Ecm Solutions, can help you set all of your retention periods and ensure that you're in compliance with those documents. So just a quick overview on what we're going to hear more about, but hopefully some of this stuff is hitting home.
That's great. Thank you, Kathleen. And now we'd like to hear from you in the audience with this poll question that we're going to open up right now. And we'd really like to hear from you on which HR trends are important within your organization. And feel free to check all that apply. What are you focused on this year? Is it recruiting, file management, policies and procedures, employee issue handling, onboarding and offboarding? I know a lot of the customers that I've talked with and a lot of people in HR tend to tell me that file management alone is just a huge first step for them as a reason they might embark on an Ecm solution. What would you say, Kathleen, is one of the top ones for you here?
I'd agree. I think the file management can be one of the most kind of cumbersome tasks to overcome. And it is. It can be a very manual process, and it has to be done. So to be able to simplify that and make that so easy allows for what we'd like, which is us to kind of lead people and keep the documents and our compliance and all those issues aside. Of course, policy and procedures, if I asked my boss, that would be what she would say for sure, because you never want to be on the wrong side of not being in compliance with having everything signed there. So probably between those two.
That's great. And so we're getting a lot of feedback in, and we're going to close the poll shortly here. And then we'll take a look at those results. All right, and let's take a look at these results now. All right, and Judy, I'm not able to see them on my screen. I'm not sure if you're able to see them. All right, well, we'll
share, yeah.
Can you share them, Judy?
Well, let me, if it's not showing on screen, let me just read those off to you. I agree, it looks like file management is the highest at 85%, followed closely behind by recruiting and onboarding, and policies and procedures, both at 62%. Employee issue handling is at 49%, and slightly behind is offboarding at 38%.
Well, that's great, and thank you so much for completing the poll. As I suspected, file management is definitely one of the areas that I hear about all the time that HR struggles with, and really what we're going to teach you today is really how Ecm can solve this for you. The next topic that we're going to discuss, another huge trend in HR, is information security. Always top of mind for HR is who has access to employee information, what is it that they're specifically accessing, where does that information reside, and when are people reviewing it? And so, Kathleen, what is the value of the security features in your Ecm solution?
Well, the biggest thing to just point out that in general, all HR professionals can be set at ease by using an Ecm solution. So the security should never be an issue. So you know that with an Ecm solution, you're getting that, and you can let that go and think about the million other things that you have going on or that you're worried about. Big for us is the granular security that it allows. So meaning that you can set individual documents or document types, whatever you prefer, down to the individual that can see them. So you can say, you know what, I want the whole HR department to be able to view this. Or you can say, I only want the VP of HR to be able to view this. And based on keywords, you're able to route all of these things to those folks and give them access. You can also say, hey, direct managers should be allowed to see this. So based on the employee's name, we'll link that to their direct manager, now HR, and the direct manager can see it. And that always completely sets us at ease to know that these documents, while all in the same system, are accessible to only the people that we want. And another nice thing and feature that we always enjoy and you use a little bit more than you think is the history functionality. So not only have you set these security requirements, but you can also have the ability to see who's viewed this document. So it'll obviously be the right person that has those privileges, but it's nice to kind of see, hey, this document's been pulled up 4 or 5 times in the last week or so, and all that history is shown.
Great, and the third trend that we're seeing right now is really Ecm helps you to be prepared. Oftentimes I hear about I-9 compliance, and we all know that the amount of audits taking place for I-9s has increased tremendously within the past decade. Kathleen, what are some of the benefits that you're seeing with preparedness using ECM?
Absolutely. So I think it was just a couple of weeks here at Highland, but we had to do the Department of Labor audit. So if there's anybody on the line that has participated in one of those, you know that there's nothing simple or easy about that audit. But with an ECM solution, you absolutely are ready for that audit, and you have all your information in one system that for the questions that they're asking for. So that's a huge one for us for audit readiness. Litigation, absolutely. We all know the terms. I think we say it in HR here all the time, but you have to document every single thing when it comes to employees. And the solution, an ECM solution, allows you to do that easily and without a second thought. And if there's a point of litigation, you're able to have all the information that you need. Employee compliance. An example for us that just happened a couple of weeks ago as well is that we have a fitness center, 2 fitness centers here on site. And so, you know, obviously there could be workers' comp issues with employees using those fitness centers. And workers' comp is not the worst thing in the world and fairly common, but something that we'd like to stay away from. But from employees signing a waiver and us ensuring through the ECM solution that every employee has signed that waiver, we're able to stay away from some workers' comp. File retention, absolutely. Like Katie mentioned, I-9s, the complexity of I-9s continues to change and continues to keep people guessing. But being able to have all your I-9s in one system, know that the information is accurate by putting certain checks on the documents, but also being able to set your retention periods. Specifically for us at Highland with I-9s, a lot of file retention you can just set to automatically purge. But if you're just a little extra nervous because I-9s are as serious as they are, you can have it route to a workflow where you say, hey, this is time to purge this document, but let's get one more set of eyes from an HR professional on it. And disaster recovery, of course. With electronic documents all in a system, that flood, that natural disaster, is it going to be an issue for you?
Great, and as we just discussed, those are 3 areas where ECM, the benefits that it can bring to you. As we mentioned, and Kathleen explained through the use of ECM at Highland, it helps you to be competitive, to make sure your information is secured, and to ultimately be prepared for whatever situation arises. Next, we'd like to talk with you about an easy approach to ECM. Now, when you think of ECM, any ECM solution can consist of hundreds of different things or modules. There's different ways that you can use an ECM solution. And we categorize these into 6 categories so that it's easier to understand all that an ECM solution can do for you. So we start with capture, process, and then go through to how you access your content, what ECM can integrate with, measure, and then the storing of your content. So we're going to take a deeper dive into each of these areas and talk about what we consider the gold standard for ECM. So if you're going to use an ECM solution, here is what you should be doing in each of these different areas. So let's start with capture. When we're capturing documents, we want to capture all of it into one system. So when we take a look at this graphic here, all of your information, whether it's coming from a filing cabinet, Sharepoint site, your email, a mobile device, documents or forms, wherever that information is coming from, it should easily be imported, could easily be imported into your ECM solution. And the key here is that it's done with minimal data entry. So your HR folks are no longer entering in all of that employee's information. Think of on day 1 when you've got a new employee starting. All of those 10 documents Kathleen mentioned, they don't have to manually enter all that information anymore. Instead, they can focus on other areas of their job that might need a little bit more attention. So Kathleen is going to talk to us a little bit about how we're using the capture functionality of an ECM solution within our HR department.
Great, thanks, Katie. So right from the start, during that onboarding process, at Highland in 2013, that's the numbers that I pulled, we received over 12,000 applications. So to fill about 400 positions. So that's a lot of applications, a lot of documents to manage coming into our system. And like I mentioned, they're all in one place and we're able to easily route them. And the capture piece of that is that they're filled out online like any application would be, speaks with our system, and next thing you know, they're in our system and the recruiter is looking at them in that ECM solution that she's always used to. And from there, she can route them around to the appropriate people, do different tasks, execute things that need to be done, and it starts that life cycle from, hey, let's see if this candidate's available for an interview. Let's push it on to their manager. Let's hire them. Or, you know what, they weren't absolutely a fit. They might be a fit for another position. Route them that way. And all that kind of stuff that needs to take place with that onboarding piece. Employee file, same kind of thing. So we're capturing, like I said on that first day, and like Katie mentioned, those 10 documents. And we continue to build on those documents so these employee files get larger than we even know what to do with. But it's all electronic and it's all easy. So really, we don't care if an employee file gets up to 40 documents. For us, it's the same as managing 1 or 2 documents. And that's 400 candidates that you're thinking of annually that we onboard. So at Highland, it's every other week. We've got a class of about 20 new hires. And how nice to just say, oh, we've got this down. Great. All your documents are in their ECM solution, and we're off and running.
That's great. So really having that capture aspect really eliminates a lot of the manual work that would be associated with paper documents. The next one of the most common you hear about with an ECM solution is process. The gold standard for this is revolutionize your processes. And I say this because ECM works well in 2 different scenarios. We know that its bread and butter is structured processes. Anything that is defined, policies and procedures, for example, tend to follow the same process over and over again for review. But there's also unstructured information as well, and when we combine both of those together, we get case management solutions. Let's take a deeper dive into those. So your structured processes. Routing information to the right people. We can automate those predictable decisions. Your employees can revise and sign documents electronically, and we can generate documents and distribute them, which Kathleen touched on again with policies and procedures, your employee handbook, sending that out for everyone to review and acknowledge. However, you also have a lot of unstructured information that you need to manage, and an ECM solution can do that as well. What I constantly think about is when I'm dealing with a process or a project, all the sticky notes that I used to put up on my laptop to remind me for a specific project. We don't need to do that with an ECM solution. Instead, all of that unstructured information, those notes, those side conversations, can all be put into your solution to provide you with all the information you need to make accurate decisions. And when you combine both of those together, you really provide your HR professionals with useful tools to manage all of the tasks and activities that they need to make decisions. So you're really empowering your knowledge workers, your HR professionals, to make smart and accurate decisions. And to put this into more perspective, Kathleen's going to talk a little bit about how we use case management for new hire checklists, and then explain how we're using workflow in more of a structured process using an ECM solution.
So this is probably one of my favorite ones, this new hire checklist, which is a case management solution. I've been in the HR department for almost 8 years now, and when we started, the new hire process was automated a little bit, but you still had all those things that you were shooting kind of a random email for or picking up the phone and calling for, and now we're able to use this checklist and create a holistic view of all the things that need to be done for that new hire and collaborate. So for example, you decide that the new employee is going to start. From that offer letter process, just by submitting a few key details, so their start date, their salary, their seat location, their department, that recruiter will submit a few of those details into the form, and when they press submit, automatically on the back end using the solution, we're able to get everything running from that simple clip. So that means that payroll is notified. They're notified that, hey, you might want to set up a new account for Joe Smith who's starting in a couple of weeks. That means the department's notified. They accept it. This is going to be their start date. We have about a 4-week training period when every employee comes on board. So the training department is notified, hey, add this new member to your class. IS is notified, hey, this is going to be their seat, but you know what? They need a computer, a keyboard, a phone. And then even as simple as facilities, who needs to wheel out their chair so that they've got a brand new chair for their first day. And all of this happens with that one submit button. I love the days that you no longer have to kind of chase people down and see where is everything in the process? Because beyond this notifying everyone, you are also able to look and say, all right, where's the status on this? Searching in the ECM solution, is this complete? Is it in progress? Has somebody even opened this note to see that they have to take action? And then, of course, the policies and procedures. So you're able, like we said, to say in the click of a button and not be panicked that, all right, we've got to get one more email out to employees with this new policy that just came in place. What you're able to do is say, all right, I'm going to upload this one document to the system. It's automatically going to shoot an email out to the entire company, and we're going to be able to manage it from there and ensure that we're in compliance.
That's great. Great. And once again, you hear the same theme over and over that really doing this and implementing an ECM solution allows you to focus on all those other tasks and not manually routing that information. The third category is access. And with an ECM solution, you should be able to access your content easily from anywhere. So that means for most HR professionals, we want you to be able to access it easily from your desk. So if you are like me or Kathleen and you live in your email, you should be able to work through that ECM system right from your email application. In addition, if you're a recruiter and you're out on the road a lot, you should also be able to access the same information from a mobile device. We also provide offline access, and you also want to have extended network access before an employee starts. Maybe you want to give them access through an online portal to a limited portion of your ECM solution so that they can fill in their information and you kind of push some of that manual data entry onto them. Same is true for policies and procedures. You could have your employees log on through an online portal, review the documents needed, and sign off on them. And for Kathleen, her access really is noteworthy with employee file management and performance management.
Yeah, absolutely. So you picture all those changes that an employee wants to make. One that comes to mind for me is an employee that changes their direct deposit form. So they've got everything set up in payroll, and all of a sudden they want to either switch the amounts, they want some in checking, some in savings, they want to switch their banks altogether, whatever it might be. The old kind of way that we used to run things was, hey, pick up the phone and call that person who manages payroll. Now it's all self-service. That employee logs on, and like Katie said, they can access anywhere. They log on through their mobile device, it might be, from the hotel room, from the airport, and they're able to change that form, submit it, and it makes its way right to payroll. So a huge thing, because even if they couldn't access everywhere, but they could still get in the system, you'd have that thing of, hey, I'm not in the office. Okay, can you just do this for me anyway? And they're reaching out to HR with that request. But now it's like no one has any issue on how they can access these documents, and it can be self-service. And performance management. This one comes to mind because it's such limited and granular security. So a vice president of HR here might be one of the only people that has access to all performance improvement plans and things of that nature. And they get a call from some manager asking, hey, can you look up this employee for me? He's actually thinking of transferring to our department or whatever the case might be. She's out of the office for a week. Because she can access these documents anywhere, we don't have to wait or have a bottleneck created waiting for her to return to be able to log in. So it's seamless to be able to say that business doesn't stop and can run, no matter of where people are these days on the road.
The next one is integrate. And the gold standard is to integrate your content with other applications. But I'd like to add with this, while you want your ECM system to be able to integrate with your enterprise applications, be it your ERP or maybe your HRIS system or any of your productivity tools such as Sharepoint or your email, the great thing is like I mentioned earlier, you can work directly from these applications and still access all the content that's in your ECM solution. However, that's not the only benefit to an integration with an ECM system. It's also the synchronization of this data. So if you make one change to a document or a form in your ECM solution, it's going to update that information wherever else it resides if it's integrated with your ECM solution. And for Kathleen, like we mentioned earlier, the biggest integration that she uses in HR is the integration for Microsoft Outlook. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I'm sure like most of you, I can't disconnect from my email. I cannot get away. I try so hard to even minimize it on my screen if I'm working on a project to get things done, but it's just too tempting. And so I love being in Outlook. I'm in there all day long, and it's nice for me to be able to execute my tasks right in that system that I love so dearly. So this could be a number of things and can relate to really all employees. It's using the Ecm solution, but for me, a day might look like 8 PTO requests for members of my team. That instead of logging in and approving, I can easily see that navigation that I would in the clients, the Ecm clients that I'm used to, right in the right-hand panel. So I see that task, approve, deny, ask for more details, whatever it is. And I've never left that line of business application that I enjoy, and I'm that much more efficient. I might next get 3 or 4 purchase order requests. Same thing. It's an email that comes to my inbox that just says, here's the amount, here's the vendor, approve or deny, right from Outlook, never logging into that Ecm.
So once again, if you had employee files, for instance, and you're used to that big, bulky employee file that you have to go search for, you no longer have to do that with having this seamless access through these integrations. The next one is measure, which is my personal favorite, which is being able to measure your process and system performance. And the key here is without IT having to help you with this, that you in HR are able to do this on your own. You can find reports, you can do exception reporting, and Kathleen will go into a lot of these, but really to develop a deeper insight into your audit preparedness, your ROI, who has signed off on different policies and procedures in your company, things of that nature. But being able to develop these insights into your processes without having IT there to help you is huge. You have the control over your information, and you can ask questions about this data and run reports and do whatever you need to really figure out what actions you need to take next. So Kathleen, let's talk a little bit about how you're using the measure category of Ecm for policies and procedures.
Sure. So we talk about this compliance word, all the time. So we've got to be in compliance. We have to be sure that every employee has signed something. But what does that process really look like? Am I reading through, even though they're electronic, am I reading through all these documents, ensuring that they're signed? I'm not. I'm able to go in and view that document. So if I go back to that employee handbook, I'm able to pull up that document through that Ecm solution and say, okay, run me a quick report, simple click of a task, and let me know who's delinquent or who hasn't acknowledged this document yet. It might shoot back a hit list of, okay, we're 1,600 employees. Say, hey, let's be generous. We got 90% of people that reviewed it when we asked them to. 10% of that employee list comes back, 160 employees that haven't reviewed it. Well, we need everyone to review that document. So from another simple click, I'm able to say, you know what, give these people a nudge. Send them another email that says you have a document waiting that's outstanding that you need to acknowledge. And I can quickly, right from that Ecm solution, say, if I want special wording in there, exclamation points, bold some letters to be sure that this really captures their attention, I'm able to do that right from there. And so that took me 2 clicks to get that message out to these folks.
That's powerful. Instead of having to spend your time chasing around each of these employees and asking them to please review these documents. Absolutely. And the final category is store. And we want to be able to secure, protect, and destroy our content when it's needed. And your Ecm solution has the ability to do all that, as we talked about earlier with the trends. The security features in Ecm get so detailed that you can define it all the way down to that user level. We also are protecting our information in case of an audit. You're prepared for any of that. And we retain and destroy content when necessary, as Kathleen had mentioned before. So let's talk a little bit about employee file management and the benefits of the store functionality of Ecm and what it brings to you.
Absolutely. So again, like we spoke to before, these retention periods always kind of creep up on us. And between all the documents that we have, it's hard to keep track of, all right, is the W-2 4 years or 6 years? And what about that W-4? And should we make our own rules? And what are we allowed to make our own rules on? So getting to the bottom of that can be very difficult. But once you do, things can be so easy because you can set the system to know that this document can be purged after this date, and you know what, it's not really going to be that big of a deal. Or like I explained with the I-9, we can say, yes, it can be purged, but I want one extra set of eyes on that just because we're a little paranoid here. And it's wonderful to be able to say that, all right, we're keeping in compliance with our system, getting rid of the documents that we need to, and keeping the ones that we need to as well. So we know for some payroll documents, that's 7 years. Well, who's remembering in 7 years, you might not even have the same employee managing your system. So automatically, you know, that can just happen, or they can get shifted to a workflow that someone would have access to, and they can review them there. So really nice to know that you're storing the documents you need for as long as you need to store them.
And I think that's really crucial too, Kathleen. And one of the things that I'm hearing from a lot of HR professionals, you know, constantly we're talking about these I-9s. And as you said, some people are a little paranoid as to how long should we keep these. And, you know, being able to purge documents when they're no longer need to be retained is huge, because as a lot of you probably know, maintaining something like an I-9 form after you no longer need it could still result in fines. If you have any errors on those paper documents, you're still going to get fined for each one of those, even though you no longer needed to retain it. So it's definitely important that you consider that as well. So just to summarize these 6 categories, even though there are hundreds of things that you can do with an ECM solution, it all boils down to these 6 categories of being able to capture your information, revolutionize your process workers so that your knowledge workers, your HR staff, has all the information they need to make smart decisions. They have access to this content from wherever they're comfortable. We're integrating with any of your other line of business applications, and it's not only providing you with that access through the applications you use every day, but we're also maintaining and updating that data when needed. You're also able to develop insights by using our measure category of ECM, as Kathleen mentioned, being able to see how many people have signed off on a new policy, and store, which we just covered as well. And now, for the final segment of this presentation, we'd like to talk with you briefly about a useful framework that you can use when you start to think about HR solutions and what you can do using ECM. So, coincidentally, those 6 categories that we just discussed are the components of every ECM solution. And think about how you could take advantage of each of these different categories in your own HR department. My manager, when I first started this role, he challenged me to do this myself, and I said to him, you know, I'm not in HR, I'm learning the ropes in HR, but I can't create a solution on my own. And he said, yes, you can. Take a step back and think about each of these categories, and that's what I did. The first thing I asked myself are, what are the kinds of documents that someone in HR would want to capture? We have applications, we have tax documents, your employee handbook. You might just have several employee files that you're just looking to get digitized. And then I thought about the processes. What are the processes that we would like to revolutionize with ECM? And some of them are those which you had already talked to us today about in that poll, or onboarding and offboarding, policies and procedures, being able to collaborate easily with others. Access. Who needs access to this information? So maybe a recruiter, a generalist, manager, and executive. And what do we need this ECM solution to integrate with? Maybe it's an ERP like PeopleSoft. Maybe it's Microsoft Office or your email application. And what am I looking to measure? As Kathleen had mentioned, maybe it's those missing documents. Or maybe we're trying to figure out how long it takes to hire and onboard a new employee. And finally, in the store category, how long am I looking to retain this information? And so there are a few of the regulations that could be put in place for this. And when you take a step back and you look at this and the information in each of these categories, you start to develop an understanding of what some possible HR solutions could look like using an ECM system. And the great thing about ECM is, as it says right in this name, it's for your content throughout your enterprise. So if you're looking to pursue something like ECM, one of the great selling factors to the decision makers in your company is that you can leverage this same solution into other areas. So accounts payable is another area that I focus on a lot here at Highland. And the same thing is true. I can think about all the information that I need to capture, who needs access to it, what processes I have in place that I'd want to revolutionize with ECM, and you can see that you can start to make these same or similar types of solutions in other areas of your business. So what I challenge you all to do is think about your next solution and how ECM could help transform some of your processes, and think about what are the documents that you would like to capture, and what critical line of business systems would it be great to have that seamless integration with. And I'd like to hear too from Kathleen, you know, how do you think of your next solution for ECM, and what really gets the brain going about what to think about when you're considering next steps or expanding a solution or moving into a new area?
Sure, thanks, Katie. So for me, you know, sometimes I get a little bit geeked out with this stuff, and maybe are on the other end where all I'm thinking about is, you know, the smallest things, can an ECM solution be involved? And a lot of times it's laughable how small that little, you know, pain point or process that we're doing, and I'm thinking, I think there's still a way. I think there's still a way to make this more efficient with an ECM solution. So we've spent most of the time this afternoon talking about really the nuts and bolts and those critical pieces in HR that need to be revolutionized through an ECM solution. But just for the examples for this portion, thought I'd do some fun ones. So we try to have a wonderful corporate culture here at Highland and keep employees engaged and keep it lively. And so we even use ECM for some of those things. So one of those programs was we just introduced a sabbatical program. So 4 weeks off after you've been here for 8 years, 4 weeks of paid time off. So obviously we already use our ECM solution to manage time off requests. So your normal PTO, your 1 day or 2 day, your week vacation. And that just goes to the manager for review and shoots over to payroll. So we thought, all right, we could do the sabbatical probably pretty similar. You know, we can lump it into that form, and it can, for the user experience, the employee still goes to that time off request form. But the solution knows that when they select sabbatical, it's going to have a few different requirements and a little bit different routing because it's more significant time off. So now it's going to go to the manager. It's going to go to the vice president of that department. And it's also, you know, for our initial year, which was just 2014, we said we want some HR awareness too on that VP level. So it goes to the VP of HR. All requirements that you can kind of customize, but for the employee, they know no different because it's the same form that they're used to. And developing that solution, a couple of hours, maybe, because we already had half of it built and we're just using a little bit increased functionality. So that was kind of a fun one to come up with. And of course, when you're talking about sabbaticals, what's not fun about that? And then we also did, so we try to do as much as we can for the community and to give back. And we had an employee ask us at the time of Hurricane Katrina that said, you know what, I really want to give $500 to this cause and to help, and I want to do it to the American Red Cross, but I don't have that money up front. So it was really easy for us to say, you know what, this is something, because we're trying to be in the business of say yes to as much as you can, you know, for employees. If it's not changing the business radically, can we support our employees even further? And we thought, you know what, we can do this. So simple task again, it's a form that you fill out. It's called Payroll Deduction Form. It's in your ECM solution, and you select, you know what, I want to give a total of $500, and I want to break it out in these increments over the whole year, over 6 months, whatever that time may be, so that you take this amount out of my pay. I won't even notice it because it's so small, but Highland will still give this $500 to the Red Cross on my behalf. So just some of those things, too, that you're not even probably thinking about when you're just beginners to ECM because you're thinking about, okay, what's that business critical thing first? But where we've gotten, which has been so enjoyable for me, is taking it even beyond to say, there's a million processes, even beyond the day-to-day things that you have to do, that it can help with as well.
That's great, Kathleen. And really, with that, we've explained to you the benefits that ECM can bring to HR. We've showed you through those 6 categories an easy approach to ECM, and hopefully provided you with a useful framework to just really get you to start thinking about how an ECM system can really transform how your HR department functions. And by doing so, you will put the human back into human resources. And with that, I'm going to hand it on over back to Judy, and we will be happy to take some questions from the audience.
Thank you, Katie. So yes, as Katie mentioned, at this time, we'll open the floor to answer any of questions you may have. Please type in your questions using the Questions tab in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. And we do have a number of questions that have already come in. So Katie and Kathleen, the first question we have here is, how does this really integrate with payroll, employee benefits, and HRIS?
All right, Kathleen, do you want to take a stab at this one?
Sure, yeah. So your Ecm solution should provide integrations to your HCM and payroll systems at both user and data level. At user level, it offers HR users the ability to retrieve ECM documents directly from their payroll screen. So they're able to do that. In the data level integrations, it removes the needs for HR payroll to manually rekey data. So you don't have to say, okay, I'm going to see it in one system, rekey it in another. And at Highland, we use a data level integration to automatically import payroll change and time off requests. So those are those requests that we said are self-service for employees. So when they submit those requests, we're able to automatically put those into our payroll system using this data level integration. So it saves us the time and it removes us that risk of that manual entry.
Perfect. Are there any other questions?
Yes, we have a few more. Another question from Marie. What new hire forms have electronic sign-off?
So the new hire forms, so we have a few ways we go about it. So I was talking about how we have that HR portal. So before an employee starts, just to kind of get a jump start on things, we send them a link to a protected HR portal where they can, one, learn about the company a little bit, read that kind of extensive handbook so they're not bombarded on their first day, because their first day we want to simulate them to the culture, excite them, not inundate them with those 10 documents they have to sign. So about 8 of those documents they sign through the portal. Some of those are a fun one for us. They do an about me, so they tell us a little bit about themselves and will promote, their favorite things to all employees. They do the appropriation of likeness agreement. They do a direct deposit form, an EEO information form, an employee history form, representation letter, veteran and disability form, state withholding forms. I'm sure I forgot something in there, but you get the picture. So they do a lot through the HR portal. On their first day, we do have them sign 2 forms in person. So they're going to sign their offer letter and they're going to sign the I-9. We know the complexities around the I-9s, so an electronic form through the system is justifiable, but what we do is we just, for those 2 things that they're doing that day of, we have them sign it and they're sitting next to a recruiter right there on the spot. So one, it kind of creates that beginning attachment on their first day, but also then we have the witness to the signature. Those forms are then uploaded or scanned, captured, if you will, into our system and automatically created into that employee file. So those are those documents. Just getting us started though, and then there's more to come.
Thanks, Kathleen. And we do have a number of questions coming in for people asking if the recording of this presentation will be available, and yes, it will be. So we will send that out to you after the webinar. Let's see, the next question we have for Katie and Kathleen. Could you please explain DKT, which is Document Knowledge Transfer, in the Policy and Administration module?
Yeah, so Kathleen, you use it all the time. If you would like to explain what it is.
So Document Knowledge Transfer is the module that we use when we talk about this policies and procedures. It's what's administering those documents. So really in the simplistic form, so I don't know every technical thing that happens on the back end with it, but what I do know is that how easy it is for me to administer. So you can give different people rights. So everybody in the company that has that user license has access to the documents that are published, but you can select who has access to actually publish a document. So, a few members of HR have that access. So when I need to post something out there, it's a simple task for me to say, upload this document, and then I'm able to select from there, okay, who do I want to see it? Is this really for all employees? Is it for employees in Canada? Is it for international employees? Is it just for new hires? Whatever it might be. I'm able to select that employee population, write, like I mentioned before, my quick little message, and then when I click submit, an email automatically goes to all those users that I selected that says, you have a document to acknowledge in DKT. So from there, now if I switch over to the user side from the publisher side, I'm that employee. I receive an email that says, you have this document to review right there. I can grab a link that'll drop me right, a desktop link we call them, but that'll drop me right to that document. that I can review and acknowledge, or I might already be in the system. I can log in the system. I read the document, I acknowledge the document, and I sign it. And like we all know, some documents just need to be read, some need to be signed and things like that. So you can also require, hey, I just need somebody to review this. It's a nice to know. Or you can require this has to be signed. It's critical.
And I'd like to add, too, with that, what about if you have an employee that hasn't approved or hasn't reviewed that updated policy and procedure? What else can you do within the ECM system if something like that happens? You run a report, you see that of our 1,600 employees, you still have 200 that have not signed off on that new policy.
Right. So like I mentioned a little bit before, you never get total compliance from your first go at it. That just isn't how it works. We wish it was. But we are able to either have a report run for you or go in and say, all right, I gave people 2 weeks. I'm going to go in after a week and just give a little nudge to those folks. And easily it runs a report and says, all these people didn't sign it. We call it an exception report. They're an exception. They haven't signed this document. And from there, we're able to say, yeah, shoot them another email and let them know that this document is delinquent. And we can do that 50 times or 2 times. We're hoping for 2, but whatever we need to do.
Yeah, and it's funny, you know, being an employee of Highland, I've even learned as well that if you receive a few of those reminder emails, one of the final ones will be that this is going to the CEO to see who has not acknowledged those certain documents. So it really, really pushes that accountability onto the employees to, you know, go in there, review those documents, and acknowledge those new policies. Any other questions?
Yeah, thank you, Katie. We do have another question. Is this HR portal a separate system like Sharepoint?
Yeah, yes, it can be. So it is separate than the ECM solution. So it's really like a web portal. So it's a private web page, more or less, and similar to Sharepoint, you could use Sharepoint as well, but just a separate web page, but it links up to and drops these documents to the system.
Okay, thank you. How does Highland use an HRIS outside of OnBase?
We use mostly OnBase for HRIS, so no, not really, but to differentiate, as far as the human capital management solution, we are looking to deploy a human capital management solution. So sometimes people refer to those similarly, but HRIS is run through OnBase, and human capital management is integrated with OnBase.
Okay, thank you. And also, on average, how many hours does it take to get one of these programs up and running?
That question is, I don't know, a little vague for me, but it absolutely depends. For very basic solutions, you know, a lot of it is already customized, and you can say, you know, I want this, that, and the other thing, and you almost pick from, you know, a menu of what you'd like. And so that can be very simple and does not take that long. To somebody that wants to customize it exactly to their needs beyond what kind of we normally have it created as. So it's hard to really put that hour time in there to say what it might say. Katie, do you have anything for that one?
Yeah, the hardest part for this is really, you know, documenting everything and defining what your processes are. So really, you know, taking those processes out of someone's head and actually writing them out and figuring out where all does this information need to be routed and where all does it need to go. Sometimes that could be a very easy process, while other times it might be a little bit more complicated, as Kathleen was talking about with the sabbaticals, right? When someone puts in that they want to take a sabbatical, that's going to be routed to a few other people that need to see that, such as maybe the VP of that department or the VP of HR as well needs to see that and approve it as well. So they can vary based on that. And once it's set up, it's all point and click configurable from there. You know, the setup, it varies time-wise, but once you do have it up and running, changes can be made just with point and click.
Yeah, and so like Katie mentioned, and just to wrap up on that question, so what usually happens, usually the first step is what are your organization's pain points? What are you looking to solve? And so you have kind of those discovery discussions with the ECM provider of your choice and kind of say, hey, here's what we're up against. And we start there and tailor the solution to those needs. And if you want them if your solutions that you have or your pain points that you have are things that every other company has, it makes it very easy. If you're pretty unique, that's where it can be some more some more discussions on that.
Thanks, Kathleen. We have one more question, and if you have any other questions, I encourage you to go ahead and type them in. We'll be wrapping up here shortly. Kathleen, does Highland use an outside payroll system, and can you divulge which one?
We do, yes, we use ADP.
Thank you. And we do have another question, Katie, that maybe would be something we could follow up with. Matt has a question. Are there any screenshots that you can share regarding the different handling of documents you discussed?
Yes, so we could definitely follow up and send over some screenshots to show. Not a problem.
Thank you. All right, looks like I have one more question here. Are these forms pre-built within OnBase?
No. Often they're not pre-built in OnBase. So you typically have those forms, and then you can create them there in OnBase. It's pretty easy. I've actually done it before on my own, but it's literally just point and click to build those forms. I've done them. I've created them within a few minutes before, but typically you've had these forms on paper forever, and it's just recreating that now in your ECM system.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, and you mentioned this product integrates with Outlook. Does it also integrate with Gmail?
It doesn't integrate with Gmail at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and that is a great question, and one we can follow up on too to get some more information. I believe it is on our product roadmap as an integration that we are developing.
Yeah, as we're realizing that more and more companies are using Gmail. It obviously started more as a personal email account, but as it's becoming and being very competitive with Outlook and Lotus Notes and others, it is on the roadmap. So with no date, but we don't integrate now. Hope to soon.
Okay, thank you. And actually, we just got a comment in from Corey who said it does work in workflow. So thank you, Corey, for that.
Thank you, Corey.
And let's see. It looks like that's about all the questions we have. If we did not have time to get to your question or if we missed it, we will follow up with you after the webinar. So thank you, Katie and Kathleen, for your time today. This concludes today's presentation, and I'd just like to thank everyone for taking time out of your schedule to join us for today's webinar. We hope the information was beneficial to you. So please reach out to us if you do have any other questions. So have a great rest of your afternoon. Thank you.